You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With the all-new Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from good to excellent. Introducing the new Sleep Score on Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caveat, N2K Cyberwire's privacy, surveillance, law, and policy podcast. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is my co-host Ben Yellen from the University of Maryland Center for Cyber Health and Hazard Strategies. Hey there, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
On today's show, Ben and I are once again joined by Ethan Cook, editor of the Caveat newsletter. He's sharing his experience from attending the Ignite the Public conference. While this show covers legal topics and Ben is a lawyer, the views expressed do not constitute legal advice. For official legal advice on any of the topics we cover, please contact your attorney. From phishing to ransomware, cyber threats are constant. But with NordLayer, your defense can be too. NordLayer brings together secure access and advanced threat protection in a single, seamless platform. It helps your team spot suspicious activity before it becomes a problem by blocking malicious links and scanning downloads in real time, preventing malware from reaching your network. It's quick to deploy, easy to scale, and built on zero-trust principles, so only the right people get access to the right resources. Get 28% off on a yearly plan at nordlayer.com/cyberwiredaily with code cyberwire-28. That's nordlayer.com/cyberwiredaily, code cyberwire-28. That's valid through December 10th, 2025. All right, Ethan, welcome.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well. So give us some setup here. Tell us about this conference that you attended, who ran it, and why it matters.
Yeah, so the conference was held at the end of October, and it was hosted by Palo Alto Networks, and it was called the Ignite the Public Sector Conference. And with this conference, they were bringing in both industry tech people who provide various services, as well as public sector people. The FBI was there, for example, and it was talking about, and the whole theme was about how do we prepare ourselves for this new reality that is somewhat already here, as well as is coming in the next, 5 to 10 years, and how can we best prepare ourselves, understand what the threat landscape is, and pivot to that threat landscape. There was a series of panels that had covered a variety of different topics. All of them were very, very well put together.
Well, let's start with some of your work there. You interviewed one of the experts from Palo Alto Networks?
Yeah. So throughout this interview, we were covering a variety of different topics, some of it being on, what threat actors are doing it, some of it being on how the current U.S. is functioning and how some changes are going on. I think, from the interview, there were two really great insights. And the first was being how threat actors are currently operating. We just talked about in our last deep dive how North Korea is, evolved over the years, and how the IT worker scam has become one of its predominant tools. And that was something that they echoed. I think another great focus or conversation point was how Russia has kind of been acting recently. Obviously, they're still heavily focused on Ukraine. That's to be expected with their cyber groups. But there's been a notable downticking, at least from what they've been able to see at Palo Alto, as they figure out where they stand with the Trump administration and figure out, kind of not necessarily a full-on, calming of, complete end of everything, but more so on a let's calm the waters, let's have a even playing field. And I think that was particularly relevant in that early months of the Trump administration where they were trying to seek a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. But, that still is kind of a theme right now where they're focusing heavily on Ukraine and not so much on trying to mess things up in the US. Rather, the people trying to do that, they named was China, who was very, very active. And they are very, very aggressive in how they've been targeting critical infrastructure.
Is this Russia thing, do you see it as some type of temporary detente? Because at least it seems publicly like the Trump administration has feuded more with Russia recently. I mean, there's been saber rattling about nuclear weapons. So do you think this is something, Russia's relative inactivity relative to the past, that could last a while? Or do you get the impression that this is just very temporary?
I get the impression that it's a temporary aspect of let's see how hot the water is before we, just start riling things up. I think there was an element of let's see if we can get the peace deal done with Ukraine, and if that means we have to calm things down. I mean, we saw that on the U.S.'s side. I think there was an announcing that during those negotiations, that Secretary of Defense Hegseth put a temporary pause on all Russian operations. So I think on both sides there was a calming of let's let cooler heads prevail for a little bit. I don't think that's something that's going to last, especially, just given, to your point, how aggressive things are becoming again, as well as, now that the peace deal, I think it has kind of been, any hopes of that have been quashed for the near future. I think that that's kind of will likely open the door again to, okay, let's resume what we were doing a year ago.
Now, forgive me, Ethan, who was it that you spoke to from Palo Alto Networks?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to sit down with Daniel Cross, the VP of Public Policy and Government Affairs, and Pete Reynolds, I believe it's pronounced, the director of their National Security Program at Unit 42, both with Palo Alto.
One of the things that caught my eye from your reporting on that was you talked a bit about CISA and where things stand with them.
Yeah, so obviously, it's no secret that the current administration has a different approach to how they want CISA to operate. We talked about it on one of our deep dives about there's been a pulling back of CISA. I asked them about what they feel about this and how that's going to impact states. They were more optimistic about this change. I think there was a element of first that while there may be some states that have or need some time to pivot, that states are significantly further along than where they were when CISA was created in terms of just general IT understanding, cyber understanding, and have this infrastructure. They cited North Dakota as being one of the standouts of being able to in recent years of developing this program, as well as states have been able to scale out their information sharing programs to actually cross state lines, which we talk about typically being a federal role, and that states have been developing these kind of interstate coalitions to be able to better defend themselves, especially when you have infrastructure that crosses multiple state lines. I also think there was they phrased the pivot of CISA less so of a we want to axe CISA, but rather a refocusing or maybe a doubling down on what the federal government they really want the CISA to act as, and that's the the security agency for the federal government and act as a central cyber hygiene agency. And I think the thing that they noted was that right now within the federal government, you have so many agencies, all with their own structures for defense, and that just is making things increasingly harder to organize, defend, stay on top of. And they want CISA to be a little bit more of a proactive manager in that role.
That's interesting. I wonder. I suppose it's making lemonade out of lemons in my mind with the significant cuts we've seen at CISA. That would be the half full assessment. Ben, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is very timely because we got very temporary reauthorization. I know it's a different CISA, but they're all related. CISA 2015, which is kind of the cousin of CISA the agency, was reauthorized through January. Now that we have a deal to end the government shutdown.
Yeah.
So CISA as an entity and CISA, the information sharing network, are hanging on by a thread.
Yeah. All right. Well, there were some panels there at the event as well, which you found interesting. Take us through that experience.
Yeah, so they had 4 panels throughout that I was able to attend. The first being on quantum, the second being about zero trust, the third being about the AI arms race, so to speak, and the last being a expert kind of fireside chat. to start with the quantum one, I think that was one of my two favorites were the quantum and the AI arms race. So I'll start with quantum. I think, the scale, everyone jokes that, quantum has been promised for 10 years, for 20 years, right?
Right,
it's just 10 years
right.
away. It's just 10 years away.
It's like nuclear fission. It'll be here in 20 years, no matter when you ask.
Exactly. I think, this feels a little different, given the regulatory standards that are being mandated or, expectations and timelines sunsetting that are being put out by government agencies that are, now kind of being put forward by NIST, et cetera, that we didn't really see previously. And I think that kind of puts forward this thing that, okay, maybe it's actually not 10 years away for the 15th time. It's, maybe actually under like 5 to 8. And the expectation is that, with quantum, we're going to have this modern encryption that we know it today be absolutely shattered, right? And we are going to have to currently upgrade our existing infrastructure to have better encryption that can actually, or maybe, I don't know if the technical word is encryption, but better security systems that can prevent quantum threat actors from using quantum to just break existing encrypted data.
Yeah.
So do you think we have a chance to win the quantum arms race?
I think so. So one of the most interesting things they put out was, the global spending that has been being put into quantum across the world at the moment. And right now we're at, almost 57 billion US dollars globally, which is, not the craziest amount when you compare to, let's say, AI, right? But I think it does say something that we're willing to put in, globally over $50 billion into something that is theoretically maybe 10 years away. And I think that acceleration and that money is only going to continue to go up, especially with how advanced AI is becoming. And I think that has been a key unlocking point that whoever will master AI and be able to harness that effectively will be poised to win the quantum computing race.
And do you think as opposed to AI, like quantum is somewhat of a safer investment because there's less of a chance that this is all going to end up being a bubble?
Yeah, I think.
I grant that that's a hard question.
No, I think it's a good question though. I think we talk about a lot right now with AI bubble, and it's kind of everything. Every time anyone sells any AI stock, who's a major investor, it's there. You see articles, blank sold this, blank. Time to pop. I think it is a safer investment, especially on the business side of buying quantum computing abilities or investing in that, especially for agencies that are groups that are handling sensitive information. It's kind of been talked around a lot that threat actors have been stealing and harvesting encrypted data that they know they cannot break now. But they know in 5 to 10 years that quantum will become more readily available and they can break it later. And things like PII and PHI will likely still be relevant, maybe not as up to date per se, but it is still medical records aren't going to suddenly change over 10 years. Maybe new stuff is added, but if you had a medical treatment that went onto your history, that's still going to be there. Or if you have an allergy or sensitivity.
Espionage.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that aspect of quantum is different from AI, right? Like there is a element of AI right now where it's this, the Wild West of it could help you accelerate your business. You could inadvertently destroy your own business because you misconfigure it and it goes and does a bunch of stuff, or threat actors expose you, et cetera. But on the quantum side, I think it's more of a approach of organizations need to get ahead of this now because it is going to become a reality. And while it may not have the overnight impacts that or transformational impacts that AI is having, it will have substantial impacts for your security.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot over on the Cyberwire, that there's this push to be using what they call quantum-ready encryption. So it's available already, encryption methods that they know are secure even against a quantum threat. So the push is for organizations, if you have something that needs to be protected now and into the future, now's the time to look into quantum-ready encryption. Does that echo what they were talking about on the panel there, Ethan?
Yeah, I think there is this mindset that you need to get quantum-ready encryption sooner rather than later. And, they mentioned that this is not something that you need to do tomorrow, right? This is not something that is like, oh my God, we need it. Like everyone's trying to spin up AI right now. This is not something that if you do not get this done by tomorrow or within the year, you're going to have a problem. It's more so this is something that's going to happen or by the end of the decade, / somewhat into next decade, if you aren't trying to figure out how to implement this now over the next year or two, you are probably going to fall behind and not be prepared to actually effectively do it.
Interesting. Well, let's move on to zero trust. What was discussed there?
Yeah, so this zero trust was the panel was more of a use case for how the Indian Health Agency was able to implement a zero trust policy. And I think one of the great things that came out of this discussion was the value of not compromising the core mission, right? And I think what I mean by that and what the panel was discussing was in cybersecurity, we often like to think in this binary thing of you are either secure or you're not, right? And the reality is that one, you're always not secure fully. You're never going to fully protect yourself.
Right.
And I think the other flip side of that is if you're so secure that you no longer can operate as a business, it doesn't matter. And the panel discussed how yes, their job is to secure a hospital, right, or a hospital network in this case. But if they implement so many security measures that the hospital can't treat patients anymore because there's just too much in the way, then it doesn't matter anymore because then the whole point of the hospital doesn't work, right? The number one goal is protecting and securing patients from a health perspective, and then also protecting them from a data perspective, and being able to balance those two while still making good changes. And at times, changes that probably healthcare professionals are not going to like because it slows them down are important, but it's not okay to absolutely debilitate them by making them jump through so many holes from a security perspective.
Yeah, I've heard that story multiple times about how, particularly in healthcare, right, the number one priority is patient care. And if you tell a doctor, or let's say a surgeon, that this bit of cybersecurity is going to slow down their ability to provide care, critical care, the surgeon's going to say, no, it's not, right?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting kind of forced collaboration, necessary collaboration where you have a set of priorities. And to me, it's a good reminder that the number one job of any organization is usually the business, right? Not cybersecurity.
And I think, another point that came from that panel was the value of getting over the perception that security will inhibit these business goals, right? And that the best way to counter this mindset is through, really effective communication and education, not just with non-cyber folk, but also within your cyber team. I think letting them know that, hey, we're here to serve that purpose of this organization, whether that be healthcare, whether that be, maybe law enforcement, whether that be in financial sector, et cetera. The job here is to serve the organization, not create the perfect system.
All right. Well, let's talk about the AI arms race then. You said this one was particularly interesting?
Yeah, so this one was fascinating. I really, really enjoyed this panel. I actually think it was my favorite panel out of all of them. The FBI was in attendance on this one, and the whole conversation was surrounding how AI is being used by threat actors, and how it is already beginning to significantly impact agencies and defense organizations and businesses around the world. And I think the most important thing that I came away with was previously, before the advent of AI, the rough estimation from when a threat actor was able to first infiltrate an organization to data exfiltration, that whole process took roughly around 9 days. And with AI, that has now been accelerated to under 2 days, with 1 in 5 attacks being done in under an hour. And that was very glaring.
So has kind of an equivalent progression happened on the defensive side, or are the threat actors outrunning our ability to defend against them?
I think right now they're outrunning. And I think that that's because, a theme that came up is, and maybe not so much in private, but certainly in the public sector, that the private sector is not burdened by a lot of the rules and regulations that the government is, right? So they can adopt AI and implement these things, but there is still a cautious approach of, okay, well, let's not introduce anything that's going to absolutely shatter our security system.
Right.
Test it, thoroughly vet it, make sure it's good. Let's be careful before we just buy the latest widget. And I think even on and then 10 times that for the government, right? Because now you don't just have to do all that whole process. You got to get approval. There's a whole bidding process. You have to have laws, there are directives, policies, et cetera, that just extend that process. While attackers, they don't care, right? They will launch their attacks. They don't care about regulations. They don't care about securing themselves.
Famously, they did
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that the defense is certainly behind than the offense.
And is this affecting the threat actors at all levels, or is are the high end actors, the nation state actors, are we seeing them being first to adopt these things, or is it trickling down to those lower level actors as well?
I think the answer to that is yes. I think nation state actors are certainly using it. They in the panel they specifically noted how the PRC, the People's Republic of China, is specifically investing very heavily into these efforts and already using them to exploit targets within the U.S. and that AI is allowing them to scale their operations significantly. And then this same can also be applied to mid-tier actors who are using AI, and I think this was very enlightening, to scale their operations to what would be traditionally considered nation-state level capabilities.
We'll be right back. What's your 2 a.m. security worry? Is it, do I have the right controls in place? Maybe, are my vendors secure? Or the one that really keeps you up at night, how do I get out from under these old tools and manual processes? That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta automates the manual work so you can stop sweating over spreadsheets, chasing audit evidence, and filling out endless questionnaires. Their trust management platform continuously monitors your systems, centralizes your data, and simplifies your security at scale. And it fits right into your workflows, using AI to streamline evidence collection, flag risks, and keep your program audit ready, all the time. With Vanta, you get everything you need to move faster, scale confidently, and finally, get back to sleep. Get started at vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber. I know we've seen a lot of, improvement when it comes to things like phishing. Like AI has taken away the broken English. It's just made it harder to detect. Did they cover that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, so that was an aspect. Phishing has certainly, not only can we just make our phishing attempts better from in that aspect of, removing the broken English, and not only can we launch more of them, but I think we can make them, threat actors are making them more personalized, right? So if I know that I'm going to send a phishing email out, let's say it's a general one, right, out to the financial sector, I can craft one that specifically feels like it's going after the financial sector in general. And then if you have a spear phishing attempt where very intimate information about someone, maybe their address or their routines, etc.
Their boss's name is a big one. Yeah.
Now I can create one that it's not just me attempting to guess how your boss communicates. If I have your emails, I can upload them to AI, learn your communication patterns, and then churn that out as a very, very effective spear phishing.
Just when I thought I was getting good at identifying spear phishing attempts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my university does the testing that any good organization would do, where they send us fake phishing emails to see if we can suss them out. And, maybe with AI, my 100% record will be broken.
I like that 100% record boast, though. That's pretty good.
That's a flex for me. That's a definite flex. Yeah, that's a definite flex.
Yeah, it's okay. I think I'm batting under 100 because a couple years ago, I was clicking too fast and I was clicking through emails and I wasn't even trying to click on it. I just misclicked on it. I was like, no.
I knew this one.
I knew it wasn't real. I was moving too quickly.
Yeah, I'm at 100%, but for different technical reasons. I figured out we use a testing service as well, and I figured out where they consistently send things from. So that goes into its own little folder.
Yeah, but you never have to check. Yeah, Dave's spearfishing folder, or just fishing, I guess.
Fight fire with fire, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, that kind of gets to the heart of this whole thing, right? All right, AI is now getting better at drafting phishing emails. That means we have to adapt and use AI to get better at sussing out phishing emails.
Exactly.
Like it is a true arms race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought one of the other interesting things that came away in terms of, AI advancing was specifically on patching and the vulnerability that has emerged from patching culture, right? We talk about now how, the best thing we can do is patch our systems, patch, right? However, the AI industry is allowing us to flip that patching culture on itself by automatically, tracking CVEs when they're uploaded and finding them, creating an attack, and launching that attack before defenders can even know that the CVE has been published. Which I thought was particularly enlightening with how CVEs, have been traditionally viewed as this secure, great way to communicate and get information out, is now being turned against itself.
Right. So the velocity has increased.
Yeah.
So what was the bottom line from the FBI here? Did they have any recommendations for where we need to go?
Yeah, so I think the first thing they mentioned was this need for I think the quote was all of industry approach when defending the US, right? And specifically they looked back at, one of the most recent horrible attacks we've experienced, which was Salt Typhoon. And obviously that did not affect just the US, that affected many other nations. But the FBI representative talked about how after Salt Typhoon became published, you had a lot of companies coming forward voluntarily to disclose that they were attacked. And obviously they were helped in their recovery process. So, they got something in return. But that information they gave on how they were attacked allowed the FBI to find and discover other groups and other sectors that had been attacked, as well as other nations, and minimize the damage substantially. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways. And then I think the second one was the value, again, with this AI arms race, which is that, yes, attackers are going to exploit this. It is the nature of attackers. But the federal government, they talked about, the FBI representative talked about how, they have the ability to punch back, so to speak, right, at actors. They can leverage many different ways to do so. Private industry doesn't necessarily have those capabilities or legal standing, right?
And not yet.
Exactly, true. And they mentioned how there was one of the best things that they appreciate is how this has evolved more and more over the years, which is private sector groups can, gather intelligence and oftentimes analyze it in a way, even if it's very similar intelligence to the way the federal government cannot because of legal rules, and then be able to provide, hey, we have a similar data set that where we're seeing this pattern, this emerging, and then be able to use that as a central, correlation device for law enforcement to go after a threat actor in ways that the federal government simply just can't because it's not allowed to.
So the different groups each have their own set of metaphorical handcuffs on them in terms of what they can do, but by sharing information with each other, they can...
We will unshackle us all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Break the
very poetic,
chains.
Ben. Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. Yeah. Well, let's pivot then to the expert panel. What was covered there?
Yeah, so this was a panel of just various, tech industry representatives. I believe AWS was on this panel, et cetera. And, they were specifically looking at AI. It's the hot button topic. This one was a little bit different because this wasn't about, how is threat actors using it and from a government perspective and how, governments are defending, et cetera, and evolving. It's more so, how can a business adapt? What can businesses do to better protect themselves? And I think one of the first things they mentioned was this emergence of shadow AI. We've all heard of shadow IT. Shadow AI is the new thing. And the reality that is, regardless of whether you like it or not, your employees are going to be using AI. If you don't put it in, they will put it in. And The worst thing you can do is have an AI system that is in the network that you have no ability to be put on, that it potentially has so many vulnerabilities, whether that, and not even from threat actors compromising it. Let's say compliance issues, if you're sharing sensitive information with an AI system that's harvesting it, right? Or, you are potential data poisoning going on.
Or even taking somebody's intellectual property.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that being a huge blind spot for organizations right now, and the value of getting ahead of AI and the kind of just the acceptance that it is here whether you like it or not. Instead of trying to say, oh, we're not going to do it, or we're going to have a very limited system, embrace it, figure out how to properly implement it and manage it, and ensure that you aren't being the one who is having a bunch of AI systems happening around behind your back. You have no idea what's going on. And someone who's just trying to be more efficient at their job is by accidentally compromising it, and maybe you open you up to a substantial compliance lawsuit.
So the notion here is your employees are going to use AI, so you should have an AI available for them to use that complies with all the regulations and so on and so forth that your organization has to comply with.
And I will credit my university for this, not to make this about me, as I always do. But yeah, I think they recognized exactly what you're talking about, and now they have an AI system that's walled. So you have to have university credentials to get in, and they monitor it closely to make sure that it's complying with all laws and regulations, and that there are ways to protect sensitive information. And it seems like that's the future here.
Yeah. It is irresistible. It can be such a time saver for employees that I think to tell them that they can't use this, what is perceived as magical technology, I think that's just unrealistic.
Yeah, it's like telling somebody, 15 years ago, 20 years ago that you can't use the internet. Like, it's just...
Right.
Yeah. And we're also in a period where you can tell the movers on this, like the people who are really taking advantage, and the companies that are really taking advantage of this getting off the ground and are improving their outputs and making products better, and those who aren't. Like, it's becoming more noticeable, I think, in every sector.
Yeah. What other things did they talk about, Ethan?
Yeah, I think they talked about the value that AI brings and, kind of this embrace it mentality, which is that it creates this single pane of glass, so to speak, when you're looking at your cyber posture, right? Previously, and I'm sure we can all remember this when, a couple of years ago, where it was there where everyone had to have the latest doodad, the latest thing. You had 40 different devices, each doing a various different security thing. And while that was really great to have, the hot new thing, it also led to a lot of overhead management, a lot of, having to introduce new risk. And having a single system, obviously, yes, it creates a single point of failure that is concerning. But having that as being able to consolidate down, maybe not into a single one device, but into a very small select few that can be able to manage and monitor and actively respond or inform the security team when to respond efficiently with it and correlate data like it's never been able to do before, will be able to significantly reduce risk for organizations. And attackers are going to be using AI to focus and become more targeted with their attacks. Having an AI system to, what we've talked about in defense, to be able to do the counter and focus your organization and focus your defensive posture into a single view or into a much narrower view will enable you to respond more effectively when incidents are going to happen.
Yeah, I've heard that point of view over and over again from folks these days, to basically let the AI do the things that an AI is really good at, sorting through mountains of data, but still have the humans do the things that humans are good at, which is things like intuition. This just doesn't feel right. And also, you need the humans to double check the AI because, as we all know, AI, the large language models make all kinds of mistakes.
No.
It's never had one hallucination. I've never heard of anything.
I'm blowing your mind. Yeah.
And I think, very, very, very fair point. And I think, that aspect of having that balance is really important, and understanding that as with anything, when the new tech comes out, there is no perfect solution. I think I always go back to this belief that we've had crime for 1,000 years plus, 2,000 years plus, right? Crime is always going to be a thing. We're never getting rid of it, right?
Human nature. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we had the perfect security solution, we would have implemented it already, right? There is no perfect security solution. It's inevitable. Rather than trying to have this approach that I'm never going to have it, I'm going to have this perfect system. Rather, it's about acknowledging a system's flaws, being able to use other systems to account for it. And I think the value of AI is understanding that it enables you to close more flaws that we've been able to do previously. Whereas previously, in order to minimize, a lot of areas, we've had so many different security methods, right? Whether that be for log analysis, for data correlation, for data gathering. And with AI, we can put that together a lot more efficiently than before. And that will enable us as a security team to focus our efforts more efficiently and respond faster and, potentially counter things faster than ever before.
I'm curious, as we wind up our conversation here today, suppose AI is a bubble. Let's just imagine that, and it's a bubble that's going to burst.
Bubbles burst? That's new. It's news to me, Dave.
I heard that happened in 08.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those of us who lived through the .com era,
Yep.
They do. And I guess what I'm getting at is right now we have access to these AI systems that is almost free. $20 a month for ChatGPT, I consider that to be almost free. But how long can that go on? And what happens when you have to pay the AI companies what it actually costs to do the things that we've all now grown accustomed to the AI systems doing? Like, how does that shake out? I'm curious, Ben, why don't we start with you? What sort of, as you ponder that, where do you think that might take us?
I just hope we get to a point where there's well-considered adoption of AI sector by sector with appropriate guardrails coming from government officials. And I think we can get there. There are efforts afoot, especially at the state level, to regulate the disturbing uses of AI. The latest issue seems to be the chatbot problem. And trying to correct those problems without destroying the entire industry. So I think it's something that's doable. And I've become more of an AI optimist recently, even despite the fact that I still think the bubble might burst. I guess I've had a couple of very good use cases of it in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reminded me of AI's promise and that we all have a stake in it working and improving our lives.
What do you think, Ethan? Coming away from this conference, was there optimism?
I think there certainly was optimism. I think there's this kind of mindset, which is the most optimism will come by being proactive. Waiting for it to happen, waiting to see how this tech's going to play out and just kind of staying on the back rails is going to open you up to compliance issues, whether that be from a quantum issue, not adapting fast enough, or whether that be from an AI issue, because your employees are going to be using it, or just straight vulnerabilities because you're just not secure with the modern tech that attackers will inevitably be using. I think, regarding the AI bubble, I think for sure, there is a bubble. I think there is some rightful concerns that there's a little too much faith put into it right now that it's this magic pill that's going to fix everything. And I don't think that's true. But I think there is, to Ben's point, that AI does hold a promise, and there's a promise there for a reason. I think the interesting things that I think, right now, as you mentioned, AI is free for the most part. There's some subscriptions. I will be very curious to see how the for-profit switch for OpenAI impacts this. They still have a nonprofit arm that technically oversees the for-profit arm, but
the for-profit one is just going to become too good.
Yeah. That's I think there's some real concerns about the impacts that's going to have long term on AI, not from a feature standpoint, but just from a how does that impact the market? How does it impact AI's use, like across the board? Now we're talking for profit. Is that going to be charged? How does that change things? And I don't think that's fully materialized yet, and I don't think it's going to materialize for several months. But I think that's going to be a pretty big shakeup, especially if other previous nonprofits try to make that switch. And I think the other aspect that I'm very curious to see how this plays out is, right now we have so many AI startups. You have, I think it's, it feels like every week there are 40 new ones launched, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're in cybersecurity and you're a startup, you have to have a page in your pitch deck that is all about how you're using AI.
Exactly. And some of these promises are astronomically wild, about what AI is going to do and how they're going to fix everything. And inevitably, some of those will fail. Some of them are proof of concepts, et cetera. And I think, we had the tech bubble, mini bubble pop a couple years ago where, suddenly a lot of funding gets pulled, a lot of, there's a cooling down on tech and everything that can happen with it. And I would imagine that will be a similar play out where that's going to happen. And I'm more curious, less about, I think it's going to happen, but I'm more curious about who survives it and why they survive it and what the market looks like after that. Because I'm fairly confident places like OpenAI and Anthropic, like these places are mammoths, they're never going to go away, right? They're too big at this point. But the smaller ones, the startups, the small scale companies under 500 people, what do they look like after that pop?
And
what
that was
services?
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
That was the .com bust.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like the big companies survived and the small companies got completely wiped out, as did people's investments.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Or absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, interesting stuff. And Ethan, thank you for joining us and sharing your insights here. Again, Ethan Cook is editor of the Caveat newsletter. If you are not yet subscribed to that, please do so. It is good stuff, published on a regular interval. So you can find out all about that on our website, thecyberwire.com. And of course, our thanks to the folks at Palo Alto Networks for inviting Ethan to the Ignite the Public Sector Conference. We do appreciate being included in that. At Thales, they know cybersecurity can be tough and you can't protect everything. But with Thales, you can secure what matters most. With Thales's industry-leading platforms, you can protect critical applications, data, and identities, anywhere and at scale with the highest ROI. That's why the most trusted brands and largest banks, retailers, and healthcare companies in the world rely on Thales to protect what matters most: applications, data, and identity. That's Thales. THALES. Learn more at thalesgroup.com/cyber. And that is Caveat, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to caveat@n2k.com. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. The show is mixed by Trey Hester. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
I'm Ben Yellen.
And I'm Ethan Cook.
Thanks for listening.
This holiday, discover meaningful gifts for everyone on your list at Kay. Not sure where to start? Our jewelry experts are here to help you find or create the perfect gift, in-store or online. Book your appointment today and unwrap love this season, only at Kay.